Picture a dim tavern, harsh fluorescent lights cutting straight through the shadows. Sitting right there in the corner is Ethan. He's 34. He's staring into the amber liquid swirling at the bottom of his highball glass, just watching the ice melt away. He's nervously rolling a casino chip between his trembling fingers. See, Ethan is a senior software architect. Or well, at least he was. His career is now just absolute visceral wreckage. It's hanging by a thread after endless missed deadlines. His friends? Gone. They got completely tired of his erratic paranoia. Right now, he is drowning in a fog of profound confusion. And here is the terrifying reality. This is not just a run of bad luck. No, this is a highly calculated system of psychological destruction.
So why do we absolutely destroy ourselves for love? For Ethan, the answer lies in a horrifying mathematical pattern. Think about this. Over 6 years, he fell for 3 different women, and each relationship ended in absolute psychological slaughter. Each woman deployed a completely distinct, devastating weapon of control. Yet logic completely failed him every single time. It's like a moth irresistibly drawn to a blowtorch. Ethan walked blindly into every single trap. He literally handed the keys to his life over to 3 different wardens.
You see, Machiavelli actually understood something that modern romance completely refuses to admit. Men are rarely conquered by brute force. In the intimate space of a partnership, control is built through an architecture of calculated submission. It's this subtle theater of virtue. The prince wears the mask of a saint, completely disarming the victim right before the trap snaps shut. Make no mistake, this is not about love. It is about absolute territorial conquest.
Section 1. Victoria and Weaponized Righteousness. Victoria was the first architect of Ethan's demise. When they met at a charity gala, she was intensely crusading against corporate corruption. She had this terrifyingly eloquent tongue, and her intense passion and righteous outrage, it easily drew Ethan right into her orbit. He was in awe. He stepped perfectly into the role of her devoted protector. She projected this pristine public crusade for justice, but privately, casual cruelty, a secret hedonistic nightlife funded by entirely dubious means. And when Ethan dared to question her, she deployed a strict moral monopoly. She framed herself as pure virtue. He, on the other hand, was flawed, corrupt, evil. Any pushback he gave was instantly framed as proof of his own toxicity. For 36 agonizing months, she trapped Ethan in a universe of endless groveling for crimes he literally never committed. She used this unyielding moral code to construct a false self, dominating him just to compensate for her own deep-seated insecurity and shame.
Now, you might be wondering, after 3 years of impossible moral standards, constantly walking on eggshells, and relentless self-censoring, why on earth did Ethan step directly into another trap? Barely 6 months after Victoria's chaotic exit, he walked into a brand new snare. Hold that dot, because the next weapon is even more disorienting.
Section 2. Naomi and Hidden Hypocrisy.
Naomi was sharper. She was colder. She radiated this intoxicating intensity. But her weapon wasn't public outrage. It was profound, hidden hypocrisy paired with an impenetrable web of secrets. She fiercely championed strict public ethical codes, but behind closed doors, she lived a total double life. Hidden liaisons, secret vices, behaviors that directly contradicted literally everything she claimed to stand for. She used elite gaslighting and unannounced interrogations. She manufactured this massive power imbalance, keeping Ethan under a hypervigilant microscope while fiercely guarding her own dark corners. She constantly judged and punished him for imagined missteps, just to relieve the pressure of her own repressed guilt. This relationship was shorter, only 6 months, but it completely fried his nervous system. He started doubting his own sanity. He lived in a state of constant, terrified bracing for the next attack.
Logic dictated he should run far, far away from anyone resembling Victoria or Naomi. So what broken homing beacon drew him straight to his next warden? You really have to confront your own blind spots here, because Ethan was walking blindly into his final and, frankly, most insidious cage yet.
Section 3. Sarah and Empathy Deficits. Sarah's relationship with Ethan lasted 2 full years, and her weapon was uniquely chilling. A complete and total lack of empathy paired with a quiet, biting envy of Ethan's happiness. She harbored this bitter internal baseline. Seeing Ethan freely enjoy his life, it acted as a painful mirror to her own self-imposed emotional prison. So, simple joys were aggressively punished. A good day at work, a promotion, just a weekend afternoon playing guitar. Sarah didn't scream. Her mood just curdled into ice, cold withdrawal. Subtle guilt trips. She manufactured crises right before any event that brought him joy. The rule was simple. If she couldn't experience unburdened happiness, neither would he. She systematically assassinated his hobbies and his friendships, forcing his emotional world to shrink down to the size of a jail cell.
Just watch this accelerating collapse. 3 years under Victoria's moral monopoly. A concentrated, agonizing 6 months surviving Naomi's inquisition. Then 2 whole years locked in Sarah's emotional jail. That is 6 years of compound psychological damage. These tactics didn't just hurt him in the moment, they actively engineered the long-term destruction of his psyche.
Section 4. Weaponizing the protector instinct.
We really need to analyze the slaughterhouse mechanics here, because why do men like Ethan walk willingly into these traps? Remember, they aren't conquered by force. They are conquered by their own virtues. The entire architecture of control relies on weaponizing a man's protector instinct. This is a severe psychological warning. These wardens weaponized Ethan's own noble instincts against him. Victoria's righteousness hijacked his protector instinct. Men are conditioned from birth to be fixers. They mistake intense moral crusades for authenticity and step right into the role of ally. Naomi's gaslighting weaponized male guilt and fairness. Men are taught to give the benefit of the doubt, so Ethan internalized the blame, constantly apologizing just to keep the peace. Sarah's envy exploited his conditioning to suppress his own desires. Society conditions men to just absorb the blow. Their own empathy, their own fairness, are literally forged into inescapable chains.
Section 5. The destruction of the soul. Enduring these romantic wardens doesn't just make for a bad relationship. It results in the ultimate consequence, the total, systematic dismantling of a man's psychological foundation. Let's break it down. Step 1 is epistemic erosion. Constant gaslighting destroys a man's trust in his own perception. He learns to second-guess his own memories, slipping into this learned helplessness where he completely abandons independent thought. Step 2 is emotional isolation, the forced shrinking of his world. He quietly discards his passions until he suffers total anhedonia, the literal inability to feel pleasure. Without a support system, he becomes entirely dependent on the controller. Step 3. Identity fragmentation. Total burnout. Managing a shifting, hypocritical landscape causes his authentic identity to just shatter. He becomes a hollowed-out vessel. Just like Ethan, sitting alone in the dark, his career ruined, his mind way too exhausted to write a single line of code.
The keys to the cage were handed over willingly. The noble instincts were turned perfectly into weapons. And as we sit here with Ethan, staring into the absolute wreckage of a life dismantled by the subtle theater of virtue, we are left with a burning, unresolved question to confront in our own lives. Which of these paths do you think we're already walking?